Meet Andrew, born 9:30 p.m. on Friday the 5th of February. Here, just 3 days old, weighing in at 2.98 kilograms. Born into a pandemic, just after a recession, this life didn't start boring. From here, it'll keep picking up momentum. Before we know it, we're 15 and fighting to get into the workforce, trying to forge our own path, and searching for purpose and happiness. We're a lucky nation, but we're not all lucky all of the time. Only some of us will enter our twilight years still fighting fit. And then one day retirement arrives and we're in the deep end, hoping we'll be okay financially and have time to notice all those moments we missed in the rush.
What superannuation is about is personal empowerment. You shouldn't be forced to eat your own home. You know, if you've got 300 or 400 or 500,000, you have options. Since 2013, there's been a 10% increase in labour productivity, 9.8 percentage points. Not any of it went to wages. It's all gone to the balance sheet of companies. It's all gone to profits. So working people have been robbed in terms of real wage adjustments.
Wouldn't it be better if they just got a wage rise instead of more super?
The only way that ordinary working men and women are going to get any benefit from their own labour is the 2.5% super. And if they don't get the 2.5% super, they get nothing.
Almost 150,000 Australians will launch themselves into retirement this year. Enough to fill the stadium 3 times. Now we're out of recession now, but carrying a legacy of debt, high unemployment, volatile financial markets, and minuscule interest rates. So what will the impact of that be on you and your retirement, especially now that we're living so much longer? And how do you make sure that you don't get caught short?
My name's Andrew Thompson, I'm 48, I'm a full-time taxi driver in Melbourne. COVID's been incredibly tough on all of us. About 4 years ago, we were actually earning about $400 a day. And then when COVID hit, we were down to like $20 to $40 a day. And it was causing problems with the family, we were arguing, fighting, you know, thinking, what do we do? Do we pay the rent or do we eat? And then you've got that awkward conversation with the landlord and, you know, like, well, we've got to buy food this week, we can't afford to pay the rent. When the Victorian government cancelled all the taxi licences in Victoria, I essentially had my house repossessed by the bank. I'm broke and penniless and just about turning 50. I'm currently living now in a small house down Frankston Way with my wife and 5-year-old son. It's been very traumatic for us, going from having a nice home that I've worked very, very hard for to be pushed into a small rental. I'm sort of reassessing my goals every minute of every day and having to work a second job. I guess my motto in life, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and keep pushing forward, dust yourself off, stand up, keep fighting.
Recessions always leave a cohort far worse off, and unfortunately, you know, well, luckily it's not as big as it could have been, but there's still a significant number of people who don't have their job back, not earning an income, not saving.
It's hard to quantify the average amount Australians have in their super, but for a lot of people it won't be enough to retire comfortably, particularly as compulsory super only came into effect in 1992. According to the most recent ATO data, the average balance for those with superannuation at 60 to 64 was around $280,000 for women and $345,000 for men, a gap of 19%.
When it comes to the definition of what's an adequate retirement income, the metric for that we suggest is the replacement rate, saying that it should be 65 to 75% replacement rate of your working life income.
The government asked the Productivity Commission to report on superannuation in 2019, and then they commissioned a new review of the entire retirement system. A 600-page report was handed down in November last year, but the government is yet to announce how they're going to put it into practice. Mike Callaghan, who was once former Treasurer Peter Costello's Chief of Staff, chaired that report.
Rather than putting things in little boxes, I think it would be much better to be looking at the system as a whole, and even for the government to have its retirement income policy, looking at the overall operation of all the various components and how they interrelate.
One of the key considerations of the report was the superannuation guarantee and an analysis of the impact of going ahead with the compulsory super increase. Currently, an employer has to pay an eligible employee 9.5% of their earnings for ordinary hours of work into a superannuation account. The super guarantee is legislated to increase to 12% by 2025, but there's now a question as to whether the government will proceed with the rise.
We shouldn't fool ourselves. A rise in the super guarantee will come at a trade-off. It'll come as a trade-off to wages and particularly to wage growth.
Right, but is the government considering not doing it?
Well, the Prime Minister has said very clearly that he'll make a decision closer to the time, and the reason why he'll make a decision closer to the time is because he has to consider the economic circumstances that are relevant at that point in time. But that said, the rise is legislated. Undoing legislation by its very nature is a difficult thing to do.
In a compulsory system, you have to be careful that you don't impose too much of a reduction in your standard of living in your working life to achieve a standard of living in retirement.
So Callaghan and Hume both say that increases in the SG come at the expense of wages growth. What's your response to that?
It's a complete nonsense. On their reasoning, we should have seen real wage increases. If there was no super, on their reasoning, you'd see real wage increase. There's been zero real wage increase for 8 years.
What do you think is the optimal percentage of salary to go into super? Is it 12, 15, 10?
It's the same with the parliamentarian, got 15, I'd say, 15. When Mark Latham, as opposition leader, convinced John Howard as Prime Minister to move away from the generous defined benefit schemes of parliamentarians, there was an inquiry into what a person needed, what contribution a person should make for their future, and that came out at 15%. And that's why the parliamentarians, the pollies, are on 15.4 in fact. So that's near, I think, the optional, and particularly now as earnings, yields from some shares, yields from equities and bond yields have fallen so far, there's no way a fund at 9.5% can give you the kind of accumulation I believe you need. So the answer is 15. Currently it's 12, but the government even wants to put the skewers through the 12, you know.
Navigating Australia's super system isn't easy. According to consumer group Choice, around 9.3 million Australians are put into default funds and then cling on, hoping for calm waters ahead. Most people just go into a default fund that they don't choose and ignore it. So do you think there should be some more regulation of both the performance that those funds produce and also their fees?
So I think, the Productivity Commission has said, that this is an issue, and, how we deal with it is interesting and challenging. We don't want to make the industry have too few players in it, otherwise competition goes out and then you start to get higher fees. So making sure, it's, again, I can't really see the solution other than people being informed. I don't know how you regulate for that.
Do you think that superannuation fees are too high?
Yes.
What should be done? Are you going to get them down? How are you going to get them down?
Superannuation fees have always historically been too high, and that's across the industry, whether it be in retail, industry, or the corporate sectors. Even public service funds have high fees, and they should come down. Certainly on a global comparison, they're still way too high. But what we really want to do is push them down through competitive pressure.
The government is introducing superannuation reforms in July called Your Future, Your Super, to try and tackle some of these inefficiencies. From then on, one super fund will follow you from job to job, and members will be made more aware of underperforming funds.
Well, if you're in an underperforming fund, your fund will have to tell you, they will have to notify their members and say, hey, we haven't lived up to expectations. It'll also, part of that notification is a direction to go to the online comparison tool. So you can see whether your fund is not right for you, maybe you want to switch. And there'll be an opportunity to do that via that website as well.
Modelling by Choice says that around a quarter of the default MySuper funds would fail the performance test set out in Your Future, Your Super. And being in an underperforming fund for the whole of your working life could leave you close to $400,000 worse off in retirement.
My name is Afwerk Asefa. I'm 25 years old. I'm currently working and studying at the same time. I currently have 3 super funds. I'm kind of got put into them from my employees and didn't have much say. I don't know too much about the super funds. I don't know their fees or insurances or a number of details. You kind of get signed up to it when you first join up, and you don't really look into it because you don't think it's going to matter until later on in life. I think the lack of knowledge regarding superannuation is a common thing around people my age. I just don't think it's too much on our minds. To plan 40, 50 years ahead is a bit hard. Doesn't mean you shouldn't, but I think at my age you're more concerned about organising the chaos of what it means to set up life. I don't think we've ever had one discussion either amongst my friends or with teachers about retirement. Is it something that we should consider? Perhaps. I think it's wise to think into the future.
What advice would you give young people now thinking about their retirement? What should they do?
Well, the Callaghan report explicitly stated that as accumulations in super rose, people tended to be more adequate, find themselves in more adequacy in housing. So the more people can put into superannuation and let the great magic of compounding carry them along, they can find themselves with, $500,000, 600,000 at age 60, and they can knock off the balance of their mortgage.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.